Hello and welcome to all the Maximals and Predacons. I'm Joe. Here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And today we're reviewing, as the title says, John Carter, which I'm going to be dubbing on the title, Best Movie of 2012, because it probably was. This is a film inspired by a group of novels that were published as serials in the early 20th century by Edgar Rice Burroughs. And it's almost the precursor to all science fiction action stories, with John Carter being, to a large extent, the first superhero, to an extent, though he's much more than that. He's a bit of a precursor to characters like Flash Gordon, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker, and many others. He is a science fiction hero par excellence. And like all great science fiction heroes, he's battling essentially for freedom and liberty for all. Though at the beginning of the movie, he's not much of a freedom fighter. He's a former Confederate captain of the, I think, 7th Brigade of Virginia, having fought heroically and well during the Confederate versus North War, or as it's also known, the Civil War of the U.S., or as I've also heard it called, the War of Northern Aggression. From the point of view of John Carter, he had gone off to war simply out of a sense of duty and obligation against a corrupt government, as Lincoln was a fairly corrupt president, and the thing is, the North had been inflicting on the South savage tariffs and taxes that they didn't much appreciate. On the other hand, the South had clung to slavery, which was morally wrong, and which Britain and France had already turned against almost a century ago and outlawed. So you've got a mixture of issues that had clouded the Civil War. But for John Carter, it was a relatively simple one. Freedom. That's all he wanted. And the trouble was, he went off to war, wasn't very successful, came back. Well, I say he wasn't successful. He was successful, but the Confederacy wasn't. And when he came back, he found his family home burnt to the ground. Now, I'm not sure about the novel. I've just started the first book, and so far, it's pretty good. The movie, though, makes it clear that he had a wife and daughter whom he dearly loved, and they have John wearing his wife's band with his own. And the scene where it's revealed that his daughter and wife were burnt alive in the family home is pretty horrifying. And you understand why he's such a traumatized individual, and he's so reluctant to fight other people's wars, because the last one cost him everything.
It makes Gladiator, the opening, look tame.
Yeah.
And
but Gladiator is a trash film.
Yeah.
That's one of the worst films ever produced. And there was no thought to actual history or plotting or literature with that film. But here, John Carter at the start is pursued by some Union troops who want to draft him against the Apache because he understands the language of the Apaches. Now, he's been in Arizona for a bit, and he's been doing some digging because he's a gold prospector. The Union captain, though, fails to draft him. John escapes, and John Carter then ends up, when he's fleeing, running into a tribe of Apache warriors. He's wounded, badly so, and so are most of the men. The Union captain ends up saved by, of course, John, who flees to some of the mountains, which the natives fear. Exploring another cavern, John ends up discovering some weird spider glyphs, at which point he's attacked by some rando bald guy who comes out of nowhere, kills the man with a bullet to the head, which I'm glad that works on everyone. I'm being facetious there. John Carter then goes on to get transported onto Mars in a body that's basically a facsimile or copy of his from Earth, and discovers that he has superpowers: super strength, super endurance, some minor healing, and he could leap incredible bounds in a single bound. Sort of. I think that's how it goes in English. Well, he could leap over tall buildings in a single bound. He's basically early Superman, except better. And he ends up quickly captured by some green aliens who are actually Martians, and they end up temporarily all but enslaving him. He's not impressed. Meanwhile, the other side of the story is that of Deja Thoris, who is a red Martian who's played by Lynn Collins, who's very attractive in this film. Some might recognize her from Wolverine Origins, where she played Kayla Silverfox. That said, the actor playing John Carter is the same actor as Rémi Lebeau from Wolverine Origins. And the other half of the crew are basically taken from Rome, as you have Posca's actor for the butler of John Carter in the frame narrative part of the story, and you have the actors for Caesar and Marcus Antonius, Ciaran Hinds and James Purefoy playing a king and a bodyguard. They're perfect, of course. And honestly, I'm actually a little annoyed we didn't get a full movie of just these two at some point. Because these two have excellent chemistry, as we saw in Rome and in this movie.
A very underrated
Duo. I really would like to see these two both play, like, maybe in a Western, where you just see these two going around shooting people up and whatnot. Or, I don't know, throw them together as a duo in a TV series, anything, maybe fantasy. And at the same time, maybe put them as opposites in a Solomon Kane TV series. Ciaran Hinds as a villain, and of course Purefoy as Kane. That'd be a great flick. Anyways, Carter ends up rescuing the beautiful princess and ends up kind of getting her as a semi-slave prize, which he's not keen on because he doesn't like slavery. And the thing is, you've got the princess who's keen to recruit his help to save her people, because she's to be married off to a tyrant, and she's not convinced this is a good deal, and that ultimately her people will be destroyed. Of course, her dad doesn't agree with her, and she basically, she escaped. Oh, now, accompanying Carter is what I call the Martian chaperone, whom is the daughter of John Carter's first friend on Mars, or Barsoom, as the Martians call it. This first friend is a green Martian who's keen to have Carter rescue his daughter when she's slated for execution. And John Carter basically recruits her and agrees to this promise. And they set off down a desert, keen to find a way to return John to his home or to save Deja's people. She ends up tricking them. Then they end up ditching her. Then helping her. Then, it's a whole thing. It's an adventure flick. And of course, John also gets a dog, or a Martian dog, along the way, which is probably my favorite character in the film. Right behind James Purefoy's character, because James Purefoy. And have I mentioned I'm a James Purefoy fan, by the way?
No, you haven't.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that had come across. Honestly, I love this guy. But the thing is, the heroes end up separated from Deja as Carter is captured, having been exhausted after a battle with an army. And she ends up resigning herself to her marriage, with Carter pretty much being given the means to return home, but then refusing to return home and trying to help her out. And of course, the one who ended up playing Wingman was James Purefoy's character, because of course he did. And Carter ends up then having to escape his would-be captors who are playing at being gods. And he returns to the Green Martians, liberates his bud, and recruits the rest of the Green Martians after killing their tyrant. And recruits them into going to go raid the Red Martian city of Helium, which they then do. And you get one of the most comedic scenes with Ciaran Hinds in it. And Purefoy basically going, wait, whose side are they on? And then you have one of the Green Martians who goes to attack them, and they end up being, once they prove who they say they are and that they're on Carter's side, and by giving an Earth salute that they give off clumsily, the Green Martians decide, oh, right, we're on the same side. Never mind. Carry on. At which point they both give out battle cries and race off to fight alongside the Green Martians. While Carter has his badass, awesome fight scene with Villain and proceeds to chop him up into guacamole and save the princess and, of course, marry the princess. Overall, this is the classic monomyth story. John Carter is clearly the warrior archetype, but also a bit of the lover archetype. You've got a lot of warrior archetypes in this film. Even Deja somewhat takes up that role. But she takes up much more the role of the lover, the female lover. And she's clearly a damsel. Not that there's anything wrong with that, although she's a pretty good warrior princess. With Lily Collins as her actress, she probably could have carried her own movie. I'm just saying. But her and the actor for John Carter have great chemistry with each other. Then again, at the time, I'm not sure what she looks like now. I've not kept track of her career. At the time, she was so beautiful, you could probably pair her up with a rock, and she was such a good actress, like, you know, she could pull chemistry out of that. The John Carter actor is, of course, really good. And apparently there was going to be 2 sequels. But then, because this movie wasn't the biggest success, because Bob Iger decided, I'm not going to market this. And so it flopped. And then he went, well, see, no one wants it.
No one knew about it.
Exactly. That's the problem. So this movie was quite good. Now, let's rate it.
3 3/4.
I don't want to rate it the same. But I can't argue. 3 3/4. This is a near perfect movie. It could have used a little more fleshing out at various points. The one Battle of the Army scene was a little clunky. That's a major criticism I have for this film. I didn't much like that scene. I actually liked the flashbacks to him finding his family and burying them. That I liked. It's just the army battle I'm like, I don't care about. Now, the fight at the end of the movie was awesome. But there's something much more important than simply being an action movie. It's telling a great story, and a heartfelt one. This is a movie made with a lot of heart, and there was a lot of care by this mixed production of Wolverine Origins and Rome production or crew members put together. And now I actually think that maybe we were robbed of a great TV series or movie when, maybe of Solomon Kane, when these 2 casts were not put together into a Solomon Kane production. Heck, I bet if you still made a production with the 2 crews, you'd be able to make a great Solomon Kane story. Then again, maybe you could make a great story of another kind with this crew. Such as maybe, I don't know, something like The Legend of Huma. With this production crew.
That would be legendary.
Can you imagine the director of Solomon Kane producing that? He'd be perfect. So, tell us what you think of this near perfect film. Do you agree with our assessment? And if you did, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button.